Hello everybody and welcome to DC Fine Art. Today we are going to be working on a color pencil piece, and as you can see, I don't know if you can see this really clearly, but we are going to be doing a Christmas bulb with some gold sparkly ribbon all the way around the bulb. Now this video will be, of course it's Tuesday, but just to let you guys know, since I'm not doing the live streams every Tuesday, I may end up bringing that down to where it's once a month, but I haven't picked out a day for that. But what that's going to give us is basically going to let me work on this piece, release videos at random. So please subscribe or ring the bell if you haven't already, because I will have random pop-up videos where we will end up doing this piece and continue working on it, so that way it can get done quicker. Now, doing it every Tuesday on a color pencil piece would probably take forever to do. It'd be like a part 2, 3, 4, but going on spans of every Tuesday. So, I mean, it could take a while to do. So in order for me to do, basically it will allow me to get done with these pieces a little bit quicker. And I'll be able to go over this piece kind of like from the beginning. I'll tell you what I'm doing, so that way you kind of understand how I do my color pencil pieces or whatever medium I'm working on. But also on top of that, if it goes like a little bit too fast where you're wanting something a little bit slower or anything like that, where you're wanting to see more up closer or anything of that nature, I will have this again on my Patreon page, and I will put that in there to where I'm trying not to skip any pieces maybe of this piece, or trying to maybe zoom in a little bit better so you guys can see it. So I will kind of break that down in the Patreon video. But as far as our color pencil or any kind of other piece that we do, I'll try and not really shorten it too short. I still want you guys to understand and get a lot of it in on what I'm doing, but it just may be cut down a little bit here and there. So the reference photo, let's go ahead and get to this. The reference photo I got from Pixabay. So I should have the link listed below for the Pixabay picture. And here it is on my tablet. This is what I use to zoom in and see all the pretty colors. So as you can see, we're going to be working on this Christmas bulb. And we are going to start off, and just by, you don't have to start at the bulb. You could start doing the background first. But this time I'm actually really wanting to start on this Christmas bulb. So that's what I'm going to be working on. So in order for me to start on this bulb, my first steps for doing this, and not everybody does this, there's other artists out there that may do it completely different. That's fine. This is just how I do it. I'll just pick out random blues. So I'll pick out all my blues that I've got, and I will, and not every single one of them, but I picked out my favorites, and I'll just put them on a color chart here. So I got my Caran Luminance, my Derwent and Lightfast, and my Polychromos here. This is my Derwent Chinese White sitting over here. And I'll basically make my little color chart, so that way I can just look down at this and pick out a color that best fits on my little Christmas bulb here. So that's how I do it. Now, you don't have to have any of these kind of brands of color pencil. So don't think that just because you don't have this brand of color pencils that you can't do a piece like this. You really can. You just need to pick out your colors that you have, like all the blues that you got, the different shades, dark blues, light blues, or your mid blues, like I say, mid-tone blues, and pick those all out, including your whites or any kind of lighter blues that you got, and put them on a color chart. And then just look over at your Christmas bulb and pick out the ones as you go that best fits that color. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect on the match, as long as it's close. Okay, so that's what I do to start out. Now I'm going to end up erasing some of these lines that's on this this piece right here, because I have all these graphite lines. I want to erase some of this to get some of that pigment of that shiny graphite off of there. And that makes it more easier for me to go over those areas with color pencil because the graphite is basically slick and shiny. And so just having that color pencil sometimes doesn't stick to it and cover it as good as what it should. So that's why you get the graphite showing through your color pencil. So I want to try taking off some of the graphite on here. That way you can see just a light outline of where your little Christmas bulb is going to be. So you don't need it really that dark. So that's what I'm going to do. So let's go ahead and get started with this piece. And yeah, I'm ready to go. Part one, the first layer. So with this, I'm going to be erasing some of my graphite as I go. So with this, I'm kind of taking it a little bit slower by doing some erasing of the pencil mark so that way you can kind of see where we're going with this. All the colors that I'm using, at least for this piece, that I've honed them into just a basic few colors. So that will be in the description below. I'm going to try organizing those colors for you guys of what I used. Now I will be testing out some other colors, so you may see some other colors that I've thrown into this piece. But those colors, I would just say I was trying them out and they didn't really show up as good as what I was hoping or, that I was looking for, or it just didn't add the effect that I was going for. So I would take those colors out and I would use a certain other colors. So it's kind of like testing them out. Those colors will be listed in the description below underneath part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. So that's where you'll find those colors. So what I'm doing right now, since it was just the edge and you couldn't really see, I was putting in my light blues and my mid-tones basically in that first section. And then I'm taking some of my white here and just putting in the reflections where I see them in the reference photo. So just, they're not exactly, every single highlight is not in this, and I am not doing like every single one of them to a T to look identical to the reference photo. I'm just doing it close. So just as long as you get it close is good enough. I'm adding in a few of my blues. I got the mid-tones that I use there, and then I've got like a little bit darker blue, like over that mid-tone blue that I'm using, and then I got a even darker blue. So I'm just kind of going back and forth, looking at some of those areas where the color transitions from a light blue, maybe there's a dark blue around some of these highlights. I'll end up putting those in. So that's all I'm doing is just layering. I'm putting enough pigment down. And if I'm wanting a kind of like a little bit darker than my mid-tone blue that I'm putting down for my base layer, then I'll even put my light blue down first, or that mid-tone blue down first, and then put the darker blue on top. So when I go back and blend it with OMS, it kind of makes it not as dark. So you can kind of go back and forth with your layering. I make sure that there's enough pigment on my paper before I go in with my OMS. So here I am. All the color pencils, even though I had all these color pencils listed on a little color chart that I was doing with them, I ended up grabbing mostly all of my Caran Luminance. The only ones that I really used that wasn't Caran that I would say, remotely for this whole entire thing, was the Derwent Lightfast, or not the Derwent Lightfast, the Derwent Chinese White out of the Derwent Drawing. Now, I did use that for my white because it is really, really opaque and it stands out very nicely. So here I am just kind of going back and forth, looking at that reference photo, putting in my darker blues where they need to go, and then putting my light blues in. Once I get this little area kind of where it needs to be and layer it enough with color pencil, I will go over it with my odorless mineral spirits. Now that's just my little next step. So going over all of it with the odorless mineral spirits. I don't go over all the white pieces, but I do go over some of them. If I need to go back over the white, I will do that on my second layer, like going back over it again. It's probably more than a second layer too. So here it's a little bit close up. As I move a little bit closer to around the ball, you can kind of see a bigger area. So I'm just basically doing the same thing. I'm putting in that mid-tone blue, or my base tone blue, which means I can go lighter if I needed to. I adjusted that highlight by going over it with that mid-tone blue because I didn't want that highlight there. So that's okay. You can always change it up. So here I'm getting a little bit darker as I move to the top. Just putting in those blues where I see them on the reference photo as being a little bit darker or a little bit lighter as it goes around toward that highlight. And I'm going to end up doing the same thing, what I'm doing right here, just putting in the blues, the darker blues where they need to go, putting in my mid-tones where they need to go, and I'm going to work all the way around this little ball. And after I get through, then I'll come back in with some more details on the second part. So here's step 2, which is adding in the details. So I got all my base layer done. So that's all I did was just basically go over it with the lights, the mid-tone blues, the darker blues, and then I blended it out with OMS. So now we're up to this part here where I'm just adding in detail. Now see this lighter blue that I have? That one there shows up really, really good on the mid-tone blue. So it's still lighter than that mid-tone or that lighter blue I was using before. So that's why I like to use mid-tones. I call them mid-tones because I can always go lighter or I can always go darker. So here I'm just kind of adding in some little spots or little marks just to kind of create some sort of texture in this ball, because on the reference photo it's a glass ball, it had a lot of texture in it, it wasn't smooth. So that's what I'm trying to create right now, is just adding in a bunch of little texture marks here and there, close to what I see in the reference photo, but it's not going to be identical to the reference photo. So here I am just kind of darkening up. I was using some of this blue. I didn't really care for the color blue too much on that one, so I put that back. And then I tried another one of my polychromos, trying to see if that might be, work or show up really good. I didn't really care for these colors too much, so it's just a trial and error. Don't be afraid to pick up another color if you don't really care for it too much. Just try it. You didn't mess it up, and then use something different. And so that's what I did. Now this is a really dark, dark blue. I think this one here is called, let's see here, I went with even a darker blue. That's my Dark Indigo. So I went with a Dark Indigo for the really, really dark spots. I did not do like black or anything for any of the spots at all. I just used that Dark Indigo. So I'm coming in and just adding in some of those really dark areas, just kind of going in there and darkening them up where I see them. And then I wanted to jump on over to this area here because it was very important. I was adding in these little spots you see in the reference photo, and they're like these dark, dark blue spots. So I went over it with my, actually, here's my first Derwent Lightfast actually. It's the deep blue and the Derwent Lightfast. So I did have one Derwent Lightfast I was using. And then I went over in the center of them, I went over it with the Dark Indigo. And so I'm creating all these little bitty spots. Now I didn't create every single spot that I've seen on the reference photo. That would just be incredibly time-takingly painful, and I did not want to do that. So, but I just wanted to give the look or the effect of having some of these spots in there. So I'm just adding those in with my deep blue, and then I go back in with my Dark Indigo and I start darkening in the center of them. So I don't cover up all that dark or that deep indigo. I don't cover that up. Or not the deep indigo, but the deep blue. I don't cover up all my deep blue with my Dark Indigo. Just in the centers where it's like super dark. And then once I get through putting in all these little spots here and there, just to kind of give it that effect that it was wanting, close to the reference photo, but not exact, I will go back through, and I definitely wanted to show you guys this. I will end up, if it looks a little bit grainy or looks a little bit pencily and doesn't really look that good, don't worry about it, because once you go through with your OMS, you're going to end up smoothing and toning those down, and it'll make them a lot more softer looking, and that's exactly what you're wanting. is just more of a soft look, but you still have that, you know, texture look too with it. So here I am taking my light blue and I'm going in and around some of those spots, just kind of making them pop and giving it some more texture. So by adding in this lighter blue, I'm kind of giving a little bit more of a reflection and putting it next to that dark, those little dark spots. So it definitely gives it more of a texture kind of look to it, which I was going for. So going in and around those areas. Giving some texture in this little areas here too, before I go in with my OMS. And even if you go in with your OMS, like I could go back on this, even though I'm done with it, I could actually go back and add in some more highlights or add in some more darks just to kind of make it pop more and then go back over it with the OMS. So, I mean, it's just because you've got all of it done, if you're ever wanting to go back in there and make it more vibrant or stand out a little bit more, you can go back in and add another layer to this. So here I am going in and around some of those areas with my lighter blue, making those little dark spots kind of sink in, and then up around the edges kind of look like it comes out because of the highlight. Putting in some of that Chinese white in there, just kind of lightening up some of these areas. And now here I am with my OMS, and I'm going to take this and go over all those little bitty spots just to kind of soften them and take out some of that grittiness that would be in there from your color pencil. So I'm not using a whole bunch of OMS on this brush because I don't want to put too much, otherwise it will end up going through to the next color. I mean, it could completely wash it out. So just be gentle with it. Don't blend too much, otherwise you're washing out all your color and it will fade. It'll at least fade too much, and you don't want to do that. You just want to soften it just a little bit, take out some of those little gritty lines. And if it does end up fading a little bit too much where you over OMS'd it, should I say, then you can easily go back in and add another layer if needed. So here I am just going over some of these spots more in this little darker area. Like I said, in the description below, I will have the colors listed underneath the parts in this video. So if you have like part 1, I'll list the colors there. Part 2, part 3, part 4, I think. I don't even know if it goes to a part 4. It might go to a part 3, but not for sure. So here I am just kind of blending out some of these areas that I see that need to be kind of smoothed down from some of my previous highlights I put in. And now we're jumping over to step 3, which is adding in the gold. Now, this here was a whole lot of fun. I didn't make it exactly like the reference photo. I just wanted to have like more of a gold kind of look to it, like scrolling through. I didn't do like individual little beads that were glued down to this ball. I mean, that would just be too much. And from the distance that you're looking at, it's like, no, I'm not doing that much detail work in here. I just want the effect of looking like gold. And so I went ahead and listed the colors, like I said, below. There was only just a few of them that I used. But I definitely have my dark, my darks are going to be basically my brown that I'm using. And then, actually it's like a burnt sienna, and the other one is sepia, 50%. I really like my sepia. So those were my darker colors, and I'm just basically layering those. Now you may not be able to see too well, but I'm going to go ahead and I'll end up going over to the part where you can see a little bit better, which is like right in those bigger areas in the center. And I'll kind of slow it down just a little bit so that way it'll be a little bit more easier to see. And I'm doing the exact same repetition too. I'm just kind of doing the exact same thing as far as like my darks, my shadows, and my lights and my highlights, depending on where the light is. So here we go. With this bigger strand here, I'm going to add in my highlight first. So I just kind of put that in where I think the light would be kind of bouncing off of it or hitting it from that side. So then I'm just kind of stringing it up here and there. putting in a little bit of shadow there of my brown, just a little hint of it. And then I'm going through with some of my, there it is, my little bit darker yellow that I got. It's kind of like a yellowish color. What is that color called? It is called, I have it right here, brown ochre. 50% is what I'm using for like my darker of my gold, and my lighter gold I'm actually using a yellow ochre. So yellow ochre for the brighter parts of the gold, and then I'm putting in that brown and then the sepia. So right in those corners will probably have a little bit more of a darker look to it. Now this was not in the reference photo as far as like all the reflection and shine of having something that's gold on there. It had more beads. So this here I'm just kind of making up as I go. So those are the colors that I use to make it look like it's gold. Now, if you have like some really bright spots that you're wanting to put in there, and white is probably not going to show up too well, especially like your Chinese, Derwent Chinese white usually shows up really, really good. But if you're wanting to get some finer detail, which the Derwent Chinese white is really a thick pencil, then at the very end of this whole entire video, when I'm done with the whole piece, I'm going to come back in with some of my titanium white mixture, and I'm going to end up putting those little really super bright highlights in there, but that'll be toward the very end for that. So here I am adding some more sepia to the bottom of this little thing here, little scroll or little swoop there. It's going to be a little bit more darker because it's not actually, it goes down and there ain't a bunch of light shining on the bottom of this. So I definitely want to use more of my browns, more of my sepias toward the bottom, kind of running up and along the edge of that a little bit thicker than I would if it was in the light, more in the light. And then I'm going to use a little bit more of my darker yellow and a little bit of my actual yellow in there, just a little hint of it, because you definitely want it to have that shine of gold, but not as bright of a highlight neither. So I do have a pencil that is not really, really bright, and I use those. I think it's like my raw umber 10%, or I'll even snatch, let's see here, my olive brown 10%, and I'll use that instead. So that way it's not really, really shiny, because yeah, the light's not going to be hitting it that bright down there. And then I'll just continue doing the same type of thing over and over again throughout this whole like gold section, is by using those colors. Like I said, I'll have those listed in the description so you can kind of see what I used. If I'm needing a little bit brighter, I would put some of that brighter highlight in there. I think my brightest highlight that I use is the Naples Ochre is what I've been using for my brightest highlight. And now I'm going over here to this little gold leaf, and this gold leaf is going to be more of the darker yellows, more of the browns and the sepias around the back side, and then I'm using my darker yellow, and I will throw in some highlight, but it won't be the brightest highlight I got because it's not going to be shining that much back there, but you definitely want some sort of shine to it because it is gold. Now here comes my another one up here. You can see I'm kind of outlining it with my brown, just in some of those shadows around the back side. There's a couple more there. Coming in with that darker yellow. I just call it a darker yellow, but there's some more sepia, just kind of darkening the edges just a little bit more in there. Coming in with that darker yellow again on top of it, just kind of layering it in. And now I'm trying my highlight, which is not my brightest highlight, but it is a highlight. It is lighter than the other colors, just to kind of give it that little bit of shine, knowing that it is gold. It has some sort of shine to it, just not as bright as the other gold pieces in there. So I'm going to do this one with a little bit more of a brighter color in this. my darker yellow there. Got some of my darker yellow in that area. Taking my sepia, kind of deepening those shadows in and around the edge there on the back side. Then coming in with more of my highlight, but not my brightest highlight. And there's a little bit of my brighter highlight that I kind of threw in there here and there, just in some little spaces, but not all of it. A little bit more of my brighter yellow. Now, I didn't end up blending out any of my yellow or my golds with OMS. I just kind of kept those the way it is. I've been kind of going back and forth on whether or not I should actually blend those out or not, so I have not blended those with OMS. I kind of like the way it looks, especially if you end up working with such fine detail. If you work with fine detail and you're not wanting to soften it out, I usually just go over it plenty of times to make it nice and thick. So here's part 4, the top. So now we are working on the top of the little Christmas, oh my gosh, now I'm like Christmas ornament. So here we are working on the top of the little metal piece. I'm starting out with a really light silver and just kind of putting in the brightest highlights where they are in the reference photo. Now, in the reference photo, you have noticed that it is really, really blurry up there. So probably not the greatest for trying to learn something and you're working with something blurry, but I can kind of see where some of the highlights would be, some of the colors in it. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it based off of what I see and get this looking like it's a little topper without it being blurry. So I'm putting some blue back into this. See, I'm taking some of this blue and I'm just adding it back in. It's one of my base tones for my little Christmas ornament that I started with. So I just kind of toss some of those colors in there because you do have a reflection and it's going to reflect off of whatever it's next to. So you're going to have it reflect some of that blue onto this metal because it's super shiny. And now I'm adding in some of my dark grays. And even a darker gray right there. Now I won't be adding in the blue on the reference photo or on the description, like just adding in your blue, because you got that blue. You can add whatever blue you want to it, just as long as it's reflecting, whatever blue would be reflecting off of it. So I would just say pick out a blue that you had chosen before and put it in there. Now here I'm just outlining it with a little bit more of a darker, kind of a darker blue just to kind of give it that shadow underneath, and it had some blue in there. So I'm just kind of filling it in around the edges there with the darker blue. Give it that shadow. Here's my light silver. I'm just kind of going in there, or my light gray. It's not silver, it's gray. And now I'm kind of connecting some of these edges here where I see it had a little bit more shine to it. I'm just kind of adding that in, finishing that off. And then I'm adding in a little bit more of a darker gray to that again, layering it. And then I took in some of my dark indigo, or at least my darker blue, just to kind of stick it in there and add it, make it that much more darker, but without using black. And here is the finish piece of the color pencil Christmas ornament that I've done. And we will be doing another part 2 on this, so please click the subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Click the like button and ring the bell for notifications because I will be posting videos at random. So the next one of this probably will not come on Tuesday. It may come anytime. So you don't want to miss part 2 of this. For my Patreons, I will have this video uploaded to Patreon, but I'm going to add some extra content to it just so that way it maybe helps you guys understand a little bit more of the layering process with this color pencil piece. So until next time, bye you guys.